The Farah by-election is seen as one of the nation's first tests to see if the surge in the polls, specifically for One Nation, will translate into electoral results. As One Nation battles the Liberals, the Nationals and a prominent local independent. So it's a really fascinating race. So how is that contest shaping up? I thought the ABC's chief elections analyst, Briggs, who basically spends his entire life looking at this, could help us. Casey, welcome.
Hi PK, good to be with you.
So based on the polls and the result at last year's election, how does this contest look?
Yeah, I think the one thing I'll say is projecting national polling onto a single seat is a fraught thing to do. And because of the nature of this seat, it's likely we can talk a lot about what the polls are saying, but when it comes to what happens in Farah, there is going to be just the plain fact that we're going to have to wait until by-election night to know what's the true measure of support for each party is. But what happened last election? Well, this has been a safe non-Labor seat in Farah, which is a seat in Western New South Wales, takes in Albury, the city of Albury, along the Victorian New South Wales border and sort of stretches northwest right up to the western border of New South Wales. Safe non-Labor seat for a very long time. It's been a safe Liberal seat since 2001. And in the last election, Sussan Ley got 43% of the vote. And an independent snuck into second place. Michelle Millthorpe, she's running again in this election. She's been very quick out of the gate in launching her campaign. She got 20% of the primary vote last election. Labor got just 15%. There are question marks over whether Labor will choose to run. It seems unlikely, but of course we can't rule it out until they make that decision. And One Nation is the other group that we're watching very closely, polled 6.6% in Farah just last year. 6.6% is bang on pretty well what their national vote was across the country. So the big question is, if One Nation's gone from a 6.5% or so in the federal election to a number in the low to mid 20s, maybe even approaching the high 20s at the moment, if that's the case nationally, will we see a similar sort of figure in the 20s in Farah? And if so, that potentially could make them competitive, or at the very least make this a very complicated race between a One Nation candidate, a independent, a Liberal candidate and a Nationals candidate. Because remember, the fact that this seat is vacant means the coalition agreement allows both the Liberals and Nationals to run. So we've got potentially 4 serious candidates on the table already. And then there is the spectre of potentially a 5th, because the local state MP for the seat of Murray, Helen Dalton, she is still considering running as well. There was some talk that she might run with the One Nation party, but One Nation have announced their short list of candidates for their pre-selection, which will be held next week, and Helen Dalton's not on that list. So she has not ruled out a run. There could potentially be another independent in that race as well. It's going to be a complicated one. It's going to be a very difficult one to call and get a very difficult one to get a read on. But at the same time, a very difficult one for the Liberal Party to hold on to, and one that I'm sure this is not the first electoral test Angus Taylor would have wanted.
No, and so soon. Although we don't know quite how soon, because Milton Dick, the Speaker, is tossing up a few options in terms of a date, so we don't quite have the date yet. Just another question, though. If Labor decides not to run, and we expect they probably won't, what happens in terms of where those people will park their votes? Are they probably likely? Is that the sort of wisdom to go with the independent? Does that bolster her vote? How does that look?
Just on timing, very quickly, if you like, Milton Dick, the Speaker, will now select a date. I think we're looking at mid-April or early May. There's some public holidays in the way, particularly Anzac Day, that could complicate the timing of that, but that's the sort of time frame we're looking at here, somewhere in mid-April or early May for this by-election. Now, if Labor doesn't run, I think conventional wisdom would say that would probably be a boost to Michelle Millthorpe, the independent candidate, more than anywhere else. We've seen in inner city seats like Warringah, Wentworth, seats like that, where Labor, they've run in general elections, but they've been running kind of dead, where the independent has been seen to be a more viable candidate. We've seen Labor voters strategically voting for that independent to boost them. So that's potentially you would think the most likely beneficiary of all of those others. You know, you would think a Labor voter would look at the independent versus a Liberal, a National, a One Nation candidate, maybe Helen Dalton, and go, well, I'll go for an independent before any of those. So that you would think would be a boost of, you know, maybe 5 or 10% for the independent, again, making her a very serious contender in this, in this
certainly
race.
is.